Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to the A24 Project, the only podcast to take you through the entire back catalogue of A24, review the new releases, and bring you interviews with the cast and crew behind these great movies. On today's show we review Owen Kline's rude, lewd, and very, very crude directorial debut, Funny Pages. I'm your co-host Alice King, and with me as always is Lee Hutchison. How are you this week?
Yeah, really good. Yeah, we've just come off of our first in-person film festival together in a little while, and we certainly made some A24 hay over 9 days.
Indeed, yes, we have banked a lot of content to bring you over the next few months. You know, after a rather barren, I think, summer it has been, it feels like we're almost ahead of the game now in that we've seen a couple of films which aren't actually out yet in the States. So it feels like we were behind, now we're ahead. It's a real sort of tortoise and hare thing going on. But we're going to give you some details of a couple of exciting episodes that you're going to get to listen to soon. But of course, the big A24 hour news is, well, happy birthday to A24. 20th of August 2022 was the 10th birthday of A24. Some would argue that they maybe should have waited until the 24th of August. That way it would have been August A24. But hey, no, that's just me. They probably hadn't really thought about it when they chose the title and the date that they did. So, I mean, Lee, obviously 10 years of A24. I mean, we've been covering A24 on the podcast for about 3 years now. Probably, is it more? Is it three to four?
We're going to be 4 years in November, so we're just.
Oh wow! I'm feeling old.
I thought I was closer to 3 as well, and I thought, you know what? It's the 10th anniversary. How long have we been doing this? But November 5th, 2018 was the first time we dropped an episode, but we probably recorded in and around kind of this time because we sort of recorded a few early, kind of a couple of pilot episodes, and we've been there for just shy, I guess, of half of this journey.
Exactly, and how's it been for you?
It's been really good. I'm quite stunned at the sort of the number of films that they've kind of hit. I think we're obviously closing in on sort of like 115, 120, sort of averaging sort of over 10.
If I think going by one of the rankings, I think it was on Vulture this week, from released in America, which obviously they are an American distribution company. Dipping their toe in the water as of Everything Everywhere All at Once in the UK earlier this year, but we're at 113 that can be officially ranked as A24 releases. So, yeah, a decent number.
Yeah, it's been impressive, their output, because I think we've said it in the past few years that it's kind of thinned out a little bit. As perhaps at the beginning it was a bit of kind of quite scattergun, and one thing I found a bit odd, and clearly people maybe don't pay as much attention as we do, or maybe listen to this podcast, where it's kind of like, well, actually, there's this idea that they just aim at kind of young people, and films like Bodies, it's just kind of playing to their usual crowd. But, as we've kind of seen over the kind of past 4 years and 10 years worth of their films, that the idea that they're just this people behind Spring Breakers, Bodies, kind of young, hip horror movies, that's clearly not the case. I mean, this is the company that sort of gave us like The Souvenir Part 1 and 2, Slow West, countless other kind of movies as well, things as ridiculous as The Children Act, and even going as far as films like The Lovers, which we kind of spoke about, really appeal to that much older demographic. I think it's very unfair to sort of highlight A24 as this just appealing to the young crowd. There's been something in there for everyone over the past decade.
Yep, and despite, again, what you may read in the papers and stuff like that, not all of them successful. Some, certainly much more towards the beginning, there was, like you say, more of a sort of scattergun effect of, picking up small films at festivals, trialing them out, seeing what was working, what didn't. Obviously, around about the time of probably, I'd say probably around about the time that we started the A24 project was when the brand, or as some people may even call it, the cult of A24 started to emerge with the merchandising, and they really sort of found their footing with the marketing and stuff like that. And they're like any sort of film distribution studio. You have films which are going to be a greater success. So therefore, you push them to the audiences. You make your money there, which then allows you to, experiment with smaller projects and stuff like that. And then there'll be the occasional film which you just decide, you have second thoughts on, and you just kind of dump it into the world, such as the travesty behind the release of Under the Silver Lake, perhaps. There's peaks and troughs, there's ups and downs, as with any sort of studio and stuff like that. Hopefully they're not going to follow the pattern of Warner Brothers and just like delete a film completely. But there's always going to be audiences for these things, and they have found young talented filmmakers. They're nurturing them. These ones then go on to bigger and better things, but some always sort of stay within the A24 sphere, let's say. But I think overall, for 113 films, when you've got films which have resonated as well as the likes of Moonlight and Hereditary, Labored, Uncut Gems and stuff, A24, certainly in that 10 years, have they created more memes than any other distributor? One could potentially argue they probably have. And, there's no signs of slowing down. Just looking at the A24 Films website earlier today to get the confirmed release dates for Funny Pages, it was looking at, with this, they've got about another 6 or 7, coming soon titles and stuff like that. So, it looks like we're going to be stuck doing the project for a little while yet.
Yeah, I know you saw Bodies this week while I went to see Ezra Furman instead, but I noticed like Marcel the Shell with Shoes On has got like a release date on iTunes of a week on Tuesday, so I'll be able to get that one soon. I'm definitely very keen to see that one, because again, no sign of a UK release date for that one. So yeah, we're definitely a little bit out of sync with America, but one step forward, 2 steps back.
Well, if it is out next week, once I get back from Venice, I can get it on iTunes as well, and then we can do that one first, because and then we can do, because our next episode is obviously going to be Bodies, and then after that it will be Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, and then we'll be caught up with America, and then we'll be kind of back running in sync, side by side, the tortoise and the hare. But obviously, as sort of previously mentioned by Lee at the top of the episode, it was the Edinburgh International Film Festival last week, and Lee and I were very, very lucky to speak to a few members of the A24 alumni during the fest. Now, the opening gala film was Charlotte Wells' After Sun, and this was picked up by A24 at the Cannes Film Festival, and we were lucky enough to speak to Charlotte and actress Paul Mescal, who is already on 2 A24 films because he's got God's Creatures coming out later at some point. The trailer just dropped for that last week.
And his partner Phoebe Bridgers has been announced to be in an A24 film.
I said there was no
well.
news, and now we've got loads of news. They're going to be the new, I guess, A24 power couple, like Lulu Wang and Barry Jenkins, perhaps, or in an alternative life, Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart. Oh, pour one out. So we talked to them on the red carpet, and we're going to bring that full interview to you in our After Sun review episode once we've got a confirmed date for that from A24, but it's going to be out in the UK with Mubi on the 18th of November. But in the meantime, here's a quick snippet from it, and this is when we asked Charlotte what was it like to have distributors like Mubi and, of course, A24 backing her work as a director. And off the back of Cannes, obviously you've got distributors like Mubi and A24. How does it feel to have people like that buy into your vision, you as a filmmaker, and sort of commit to sharing it with audiences around the world, particularly in cinemas?
Yeah, it's just very exciting. Those two companies are unbelievably good at what they do, and I think that gives the film the best chance of being seen by people. I think that's all you can really ever ask for. It makes it good.
So it's a full interview for that coming soon, and it has to be said, I'd not seen Normal People, so I didn't really understand the hype around Paul Mescal to begin with, but he was actually a really lovely chap to speak to on the red carpet, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was really nice, and yeah, it was kind of our first. It was good to kind of get those kind of little interviews in as well, and speak with a fellow Edinburgh filmmaker as well. So yeah, and I always watch these things and have an eye on. I was like, I wonder who we could reach out for future guests. So there's definitely some interesting kind of supporting characters in After Sun, and obviously the film we're going to talk about today as well. So that's something that I always keep an eye on for in these films too.
And then in the middle of the festival was the film which we're about to review in a moment, Funny Pages, but it was an A24 were overflowing with options at the Edinburgh Film Festival because the closing film was another After, and it was After Yang. Now, we've obviously done a full review episode of that earlier in the year, but joining us on the red carpet for the festival and in a lovely suite in the Waldorf Astoria Hotel were director Kokonada and star Justin H. Min, who stars as the proverbial Yang. It's the titular role, after all. Now, we're going to be very lucky enough that Lee got around about 15, 17 minutes with them, and I got about 12 minutes, and then we were lucky enough to speak to them on the red carpet as well. So we're going to give you a bumper interview special with those two towards the end of September to coincide with the release of After Yang here in the UK. But in the meantime, we spoke to them on the 20th of August, the 10th birthday of A24. So I asked Goganada and Justin H. Min what their favourite A24 films were. Let's find out what they were. I co-host a podcast called A24 Project, and A24 is 10 years old today.
Wow.
Obviously, this film was distributed by A24 in the States. It was favourite A24 films.
Oh,
Don't feel pressure to choose The Lobster and Killing of a Sacred Deer because of Colin, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think Moonlight is kind of what put them on the map, and I think, but God, there's so many. That's I would. Whenever someone tells me that I have a list, it creates panic in me because there's just so much. But what about you? What are yours? And you don't say After Yang, but tell me what.
For me, Under the Skin. It's got one. Moonlight and obviously After Yang, and recently Everything Ever All at Once, which I just thought was just incredible piece of filmmaking.
I don't think I knew it was the 10th year anniversary, but it's great that film came out, and because it's remarkable.
I love The Lobster with our.
Oh, The Lobster is fantastic. Yeah. There's so many. God.
Midsommar is one of my favorites.
Yeah. Great.
So, as you can agree, far too many to choose from, and even I struggled in the moment to rattle off a few. I should have always expected the question to be thrown back at me, but I wasn't prepared. But I still think I came up with a few good choices. Always got a moment to promote Under the Skin, of course.
Yeah, still my number one as well.
Still your number one, yeah. But now we'll have to see where this next film ranks in our A24 letterbox rankings, I guess. So we're here today to talk about Funny Pages, written and directed by Owen Kline, who played the younger brother in The Squid and the Whale, one who was fond of pleasuring himself in public places, and he's also the son of the Kevin Kline and Phoebe Cates. But this is far from a nepotism baby movie. This is, low budget, low brow, and I think speaks to a very exciting, interesting new voice in filmmaking. So, Funny Pages is described as a bitingly funny coming-of-age story as a teenage cartoonist who rejects the comforts of his suburban life in a misguided quest for soul. So when we first meet Daniel, he is being encouraged by his art teacher to skip college and just try and make it as an artist. And then awkward scene where he is asked to sketch him in the nude leads to a rather traumatic event, which leads him to make the bold decision that he will indeed move out of his house and into, quite frankly, the worst flat in the world. Sorry, not flat, this is an American film. Worst apartment in the world. If anyone's ever seen Trainspotting, the worst toilet in the world, this is, I would say, equivalent in terms of that. And it's about his journey to becoming an artist and the sort of weird and wonderful characters that he meets along the way, including Wallace, a man that he meets at a courtroom who he discovers worked previously for Image Comics and decides to try and use him to get as his into the industry. So this stars Daniel Zolgardi, who is an A24 alumni himself. He played the kid who was in 8th grade who tried to take advantage of Kaylee in the back of the car. So not the most pleasant of chaps. But and here he's potentially, I think, arguably as unlikable a protagonist as that as well. And you've got sort of Matt Maher, who has appeared in a lot of Noah Baumbach, Greta Gerwig films, as well as Wallace. So, I mean, Lee, let's get your initial thoughts. I mean, what did you know about the film sort of going in? Had you kept your powder dry? And, did it live up to any expectations that you may have had?
This was one I was looking forward to just naturally with the A24 connection. And I remembered when it was announced as sort of a last minute addition to the film festival, I was straight on it, had to get my ticket for this one. But I knew little beyond that it was sort of about an aspiring comic book artist. And that was all I knew going in. I knew that sort of the Safdies were producers on this, but I hadn't watched the trailer. I'd kind of kept my powder dry. And, I don't think it's a spoiler to say that in the first 5 minutes of the film, Robert's tutor, is killed in a pretty horrific car accident. And my immediate reaction was, and you get it sometimes with that level of uncomfortableness or shock or surprise, just was to kind of laugh a little bit. It was like, oh, this is what this film is going to be like. It is going to be, quite uncomfortable. It's going to be a bit kind of dark, but it's going to have quite a bit of humor to it as well. So, I was immediately sort of tapped into this film and was really excited for where it was going to go. I mean, the fact that we were exposed to this big, fat, kind of greasy, clearly kind of very smelly, sweaty kind of teacher in the beginning, kind of stripping naked. As much as you sort of might think, oh, that's sort of there to not necessarily titillate, but perhaps to shock and awe, you're sort of thinking, no, it's making me feel that this world is quite real. Like, you watch that film and that character, nearly everything else about the film feels like it smells, it's hot, it's warm, and it really brings you into this world. I'm not sure how it was shot, but you kind of, it very much feels that kind of low res film. And I was immediately starting to draw comparisons with, a lot of films we see have just got that polished aesthetic and sheen. With this, it felt like, oh, this reminded me of the type of films that we would import from America through like CD Wow or Play.com, etc. to the UK, and you would share around with friends. Like, it was the type of film that you would never had the chance to see in the cinemas here in the UK, and it would be the type of film that everyone would be saying, oh my god, this is my favorite film, and oh my god, this is brilliant, and wanting to get really behind and excited. And I felt like it was a real throwback to a very specific type of film, which I really liked.
Yeah, because, I mean, sort of, just in the way that it's sort of described away as this teen coming of age thing, gross out comedy and stuff like that. The kids today might be thinking along the lines of something like American Pie or Superbad. But even those films are actually, I would say, incredibly sort of glossy looking and actually, very well put together with, a reasonable sized budget and stuff like that. I guess what you're talking about in the films, again, that I sort of grew up in when in the age of VHS and stuff like that, was, I guess it feels actually very much like, I know it's probably not the best thing to say these days anymore, given everything that's happened, but it feels like a Miramax film. It feels like, this exciting independent voice that has been found at Sundance or South by Southwest and has been picked up. Like you say, it looks like a film that smells. And I think in my review, I described it as, it looks like, it was shot on 16 mil that was sort of dragged across a concrete floor and then washed by dipping it in, cleaning it in grease. It's that kind of just, that in one way, that's why it's a gross out film. It just, you can feel the sort of lived in look at the thing. And I think also one thing it actually does is it actually allows it to not really be dated. I couldn't actually tell you when this film was actually meant to take place. I mean, it could take place at any time, I'd say probably between like the mid to late 90s up till now. There's nothing really that dates it. There's no specific comic book or graphic novel references or, about movie adaptations, Ben Affleck's Batman or anything like this. And it is very much a counterculture film, and that it is avoiding the, this is a guy who believes he knows a lot about art and about comics and stuff like that. So he's purposely not talking about your Marvels and your DC comics and stuff like that. He's very much more about images. You're probably like your Todd McFarlane's, your Robert Crumb's, your Harvard Picars and stuff like that. That's the kind of thing that he's wanting to do. I mean, you just have to look at his portfolio at the very beginning, and it's basically a lot of dicks. And he's touted in the marketing as Meet New Jersey's newest artist and biggest dick, and there's a lot to me that feels like, this film was obviously set in New Jersey as well, so there's that sort of Kevin Smith element to it as well. So, he's establishing himself as an artist, and I think what a lot of artists do is obviously draw upon people who have gone before him in order to study their work and then find their own style. And I think that's what the character of Daniel's doing, and also what Owen Kline is doing as an artist. It's you can see little touchstones of various people that he's been admired and followed, and I think he's managed to put it together to create something that feels fresh and new.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Like, I was thinking the same during the film. I was like, oh, wonder when this is set, because it clearly didn't feel contemporary. I kind of placed it sort of maybe kind of that early 2000s, as you say, maybe late 90s. I think there was a mobile phone, like a pretty dated one, but it felt fitting with the character in a way to be handling something like that. But I thought the performances were incredibly strong. I mean, the one that really stood out for me was Matthew Mayer as Wallace. I was kind of thinking when I was watching it, and for those that see it, obviously it's an audio medium, but when you watch the film, I thought of like in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where it's like, that's the best damn acting I've ever seen. Like, that was the best acting with eyes that I've ever seen. Like, I was constantly laughing in my seat at just what he could do with his eyes, and sort of he would really make them pop, and his almost judgment and reaction to Robert and Miles, his friends, or kind of the situation Wallace was finding himself in Robert's family home. It said so much, and that I just thought that was just an incredible bit of casting.
The best eye acting since Tom Hardy in Dunkirk, when he had, as in most Christopher Nolan films, he's working behind a face mask. But I think for me, that sort of third act where Wallace is invited over for Christmas dinner, essentially, is just like, I mean, the audience we saw it in were just in tears of laughter at this bit, and it plays out, on paper, like it feels like a farce. What you'd have, everything that could go wrong at this sort of bringing a stranger over for Christmas dinner. Everything that could go wrong does go wrong, but it's played out in just such this incredible over the top way, and the pop of certain colors. Let's just say a character comes over wearing a white suit, and it doesn't leave the house with it entirely unstained by the end of it. It's just very, very funny, very, very sort of dark, and a difficult one potentially for some people to get on with, given how obnoxious Daniel is as a character. He's always sort of being rude and insolent to his parents. He's not even really that nice to Wallace. It's clear, both of them kind of know that he's only hanging out with this guy in order to get something from him. He slags off his mates, Miles's artwork and stuff like that, when he perceives him as potentially a threat to himself. So, he's not the nicest, but there is just a natural sort of momentum and vibe about the film that it carries you along on the journey, that you still want to know what's going to happen and see how it's all going to play out for him, I think.
Yeah, it was one of those things I highlighted at the time when we were watching the credits, and it was something I was keen to highlight after the film. Was a lot of people talked about, obviously, the Safdies are the producers on this, the cinematographer, Sean Price Williams. He did kind of Good Time and Heaven Knows What, and appropriately Her Smell, which, as if anyone listened to my interview with Gail Rankin a few months ago, I am a big fan of as well. But someone that I thought deserved a bit of a shout out was Jennifer Benedetti. So some people might not be familiar with the name, and you might only recognize her because she had an A24 book that came out a few months ago called Can I Ask You a Question? But she is their kind of the go-to kind of casting person for New York and people like the Safdie brothers, and she did Euphoria as well. So she's someone that really dives into that sort of Instagram street scouting for individuals as well. And you watch this film and it feels like real life lived in characters that would live in these sorts of outer areas of New York and so on. And I just thought it had like a perfect eye that really meant that you believed this film. And There was no like quote unquote stars that were in this film. They were all brilliant sort of like character actors. They all had their own unique looks and to them as well. And I just think something like that makes this film just incredibly real. And again, goes back to that feeling of this feels like a film from an older time. Less glamorous. These are characters that if you put it on HD, it's not going to be kind to them, and that's what you want with a film like this, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean the casting is fantastic in this film, and if any sort of fans of Safdie brothers films will notice a couple of familiar faces, including the Uncut Gems. Oh, this guy. He makes an appearance, and I think what worked as well with that sort of casting and all these sort of small parts and stuff like that is that these characters feel like they are just lifted almost, from like a Robert Crumb comic strip themselves. They feel in a strange way very sort of cartoonish and sort of over the top, but real at the same time. It's a very, very tricky job to do, I think, casting, to make sure, I think it was 90% of your movie is casting. You get the right people in there, and then you've got this automatic buy-in from the audience that, okay, yeah, no, I believe that what these characters are doing and stuff like that. And every person played their part, from like the lady who plays the clerk in the county courthouse, or the woman in the wheelchair in the sort of pharmacy and stuff like that. Everyone, even if they've only got like a minute or two of screen time, they capture your attention during it. And I think it's just every single face added to this incredible piece of filmmaking. I mean, what do you make of Owen Kline as a filmmaker himself? Because he wrote and directed this. I mean, are you excited to see where he's going to go in the future?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this was something that caught me completely by surprise. I think I heard just going into the film a week or two before that he was the guy from The Squid and the Whale, a film that I imported also from America back in the day. And, always remember him as the little kid that was just wanking over the books in the library. And, that feeling where you feel old, where you're like, oh, he's old enough to be directing and writing films now and getting them released by A24, working with the Safdie brothers. They're at film festivals. Oh, okay, right. When did that happen? So, he's certainly, the writing in this film, it's clearly something I can imagine he's quite passionate about, and I'm really keen to sort of, obviously the film is about to start kind of rolling out, and sort of I'm looking forward to sort of seeing the interviews with him and just sort of talking about his process and how this has kind of come to be. I'm really fascinated to see what he does next, but he's someone that clearly knows his comic books in that world of sort of that DIY, kind of off the shelf, independent kind of comic books, almost very similar to probably like the Under the Silver Lake kind of comic book as well. Like, it's not something that's diving into DC and Marvel when people think of comic books. It's kind of going into those DIY ones, those kind of original Mavericks. And, I think you highlighted sort of, the Crumb style things, and I would think of a film like American Splendor as well. This would make a really good companion piece with that. And yeah, I really want to hear about this guy's passion and what made him draw Funny Pages.
Exactly, and we just have to hope the wonderful people over at Curzon are maybe able to get some time with him when he's over in the UK. We're happy to set up a Zoom call. But I mean, yeah, you're talking about the sort of the Marvels and the DCs. We've seen filmmakers in the A24 world who have gone from small budget to bigger budgets recently. Robert Eggers, he obviously did The Witch and The Lighthouse, both huge successes for A24, and then he's been quite open in his struggles for working with Universal with a budget of $80 million for The Northman. I mean, I certainly couldn't see any issues with the studio by the time it made it onto the big screen. I still thought it was incredibly impressive piece of filmmaking, but I guess there's always the challenge. You've got the likes of Colin Trevorrow, who did sort of Safety Not Guaranteed, and then sort of basically went straight into doing Jurassic Worlds and stuff like this. I think Owen Kline is definitely a voice that I would like to see stay in the lower tier of budget for his filmmaking, get a few under his belt at least to really sort of hone his craft and his voice and stuff like that before being asked to jump up and direct like a Stan Lee biopic within the Marvel Cinematic Universe or something like that.
I think as well, when you watch Funny Pages, it's obviously it's his first feature, but it feels like that kind of statement of intent, like, oh, I'm about sort of embracing the independent film, like you look at who he surrounded himself with on the cast and crew, even just as we say, he's ignoring the Marvels, the DCs, the big ones. He's focusing on who are the independent voices and shining a light on that. And there's always something to say that money might talk as well, but I see him making a statement with this film about who he is as a filmmaker as well, that he's showing solidarity with these freaks, these losers, these weirdos, that make up this world, and that's the world that he wants to shine a light on. I could be wrong, but that was the feeling I got from the film.
Yeah, no, not every comic book movie has to have superheroes and supervillains. It can be about the freaks and the geeks. And I mean, like I said at the top, there's this argument going around about nepotism babies and stuff like that. But he does have an Oscar winner as a father in Kevin Kline. I don't think it's a stretch of the imagination to imagine that if he'd wanted, he could have found money for a larger budget and stuff like that. It feels like a very conscious decision that he's gone down and dirty with this film, to make something that feels very much like an early 90s Miramax movie and stuff like that. He would have probably had the opportunity to do something else if he'd really wanted to, but this was something that spoke to him. This is a story he wanted to tell, and I think he's told it very well. And I am excited to see what he does next, and hopefully it's in the same sort of oeuvre, one might say, perhaps.
Yeah, I hopefully he's a future A24 contributor as well, because I'm definitely keen to chart his journey on this show.
Exactly. No, so from an interesting looking range of faces to another cast of bodies. We're going to be back on the next episode. We're reviewing a murder mystery that feels like the Bling Ring had a baby with Spring Breakers, and the baby was looked after by a nanny that was Agatha Christie's, and then there were none. So there is a lot of controversy going around about this film, not for anything in the film particularly, but surrounding a particular review for that 95-minute advert for Cleavage, which I have to say, if I went to see the film based on that, I would be very disappointed. And I was looking at times and I couldn't see it all the time. So we're going to be back on the next episode to talk about that film and because we do love a discourse here on the A24 project, so I'm sure we'll dive into that as well. So we're going to take our faces to see bodies, and we'll be back next time.